I call this the You Shall Not Pass Tripcaster build, and it's one of my favorite Horizon Forbidden West builds yet. This is a build that is perfect for taking out groups of small to medium-sized machines and can also be really effective at taking out heavyweight machines that are weak to shock. If you're looking to try something a bit new and switch up your combat, this is the ultimate build for you. So let me take you through this exact build and all the weapons, coils, and gears you'll need to pull it off. And then I'll give you a couple of other variations that are really fun to play around with. So my New Game Plus version of this build is a pure Tripcaster build. I know Tripcasters aren't typically the go-to weapons for dealing damage for most players, which is what makes this build just so much fun. Tripcasters are a little bit quirky and not always so easy to use, but they have the potential to be some of the most powerful weapons in the Forbidden West. So the primary Tripcaster we'll be using is the Tinker's Pride Tripcaster. This is one you get as a reward for getting full stripes on all the hunting ground challenges. I know players have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the hunting grounds, but if you can stick them out and complete them all, getting this Tripcaster as a reward is well worth the effort. And of course, if you are struggling with the hunting grounds and need a little bit of help completing them, the Horizon Creators Guild has you covered. We put together tutorials on how to get full stripes at both the Shearside Mountains hunting grounds and the Raintrace hunting grounds, which I'll be sure to link both of those videos in the description below. But what makes the Tinker's Pride unique is the fact that it has stagger beams. Stagger beams are tripwires that basically act as laser beams that continue to deal damage over time to machines while the machine is in the beam. And to complement that, the Tinker's Pride also comes with plus 40% damage over time perk, which is going to increase the amount of damage those stagger beams are doing. Stagger beams are also really good at triggering knockdowns, so if you are running more of a knockdown build, these are a pretty solid option. But I have found that most of the time when a machine gets knocked down by the stagger beam, it takes them out of the path of the laser, so it can be kind of hit or miss on whether or not you're able to take advantage of the additional knockdown damage perk. Now before I talk about how to coil the Tinker's Pride, let's talk about my other Tripcaster, because the coils and perks from each weapon are really going to play off and complement each other. So my second Tripcaster is the All-Mother's Blessing Tripcaster. This is a legendary weapon that you can get for Champions tokens in New Game Plus, and the main reason why I like this Tripcaster is because of the shock tripwires. This is probably one of the best shock weapons in the entire game. With no additional coils, it does more shock buildup than any of the other shock weapons. And what's great about shock is that when it's built up in a machine, they are completely immobilized for 10 to 15 seconds. It's one of the most useful elements in the game, especially when going up against groups of machines. So for coils on the All-Mother's Blessing, I'm going to be going all in on shock. Since this is a New Game Plus build, I'll be using 2 elite shock coils that you can pick up in the Burning Shores, and for my other coil slots, I'll be using 3 plus 15% shock coils, which you can pick up from the Merchant and Legacy's Landfall. With all 5 coil slots dedicated to shock, we'll be dealing a significant amount of shock buildup, so much so that even some machines that are strong against shock, like Scorchers, can still get shocked pretty easily. Now with the coils on the Tinker's Pride, there is some flexibility here, but here's the combination that I like best. I'll be using 3 plus 25% damage over time coils, which is going to further increase the amount of damage you're able to do with the stagger beams. You can pick up 2 of these coils per playthrough from the Weapons Merchant and Arrow Hand. Now in this particular save, I only have 3 of these coils because I somehow missed one on my first playthrough, so that's what I'll be using. But if you do have all 4 plus 25% damage over time coils, I definitely recommend using that. And with my last 2 coil slots, I'll be using 2 plus 18% shocked enemy damage coils. These are coils that you can pick up from Merchants and Scalding Spear, Hidden Ember, or at the dig site, and they're going to pair really nicely with the shock tripwires from the All-Mother's Blessing. So for armors, I'll be using the Carjastalker Elite. Not only is this just the best looking armor in the game, but it's also a trapper style armor that comes with some pretty decent skills. In particular, the +2 trap limit skill, which allows us to place up to 2 extra tripwires, and the low profile and quiet movement skills, which are going to make it easier for us to set our traps without being spotted. I also have mine equipped with 2 elite weapons technique coils. These are legendary coils that you can pick up in the Burning Shores that increase your stamina regen, weapon stamina plus, and deep concentration. With 2 of these equipped, you'll be able to max out all of these skills to level 4, meaning you'll be able to take advantage of your weapon technique much more often. This is particularly useful with a Tripcaster because the quick wire weapon technique takes a lot of the hassle and difficulty out of laying tripwires. Typically, I'll use the quick wire weapon technique to lay down the shock wire, but then I'll try to save my stamina and have it regenerate while I lay down a stagger beam the traditional way, since the machine is already immobilized by the shock. Now there's a couple of other variations to this build that I like to use, and the first is swapping out the Allmother's Blessing Tripcaster with the Deathseeker's Shadow Bow. The Deathseeker's is a legendary bow that you could pick up from Duca for 80 arena medals. On harder difficulties like Ultra Hard, or if you're up against a group of machines and you need to shock them quickly, this is probably a much simpler version of the build. The concept is essentially the same. Load up the Deathseeker's Shadow Bow with the best shock coils that you have to shock the machines, and then once they're shocked, hit them with the stagger beam. With the triple notch weapon technique for the Shadow Bow, you're still able to deal a pretty significant amount of shock, and a lot of times it's easier to use the Hunter Bow to aim to shock the machine than it would be to lay the shock trap with the tripwire. So if you don't want to use an all Tripcaster version of the build, this one still works pretty well and is overall probably a bit easier to pull off. Now another variation of this build that I recently discovered is to swap out the two 18% shocked enemy damage coils on the Tinker's Pride with two plus 25% stealth damage coils. With this version, once you have your trap laid and the machine is caught in the stagger beam, you can immediately throw down a smoke bomb which will put you back into stealth, and the damage output for the stagger beam will immediately go up. I love using this version of the build, and it's extremely satisfying to trap the machine, throw down a smoke bomb, and then just watch that damage number jump up. Now the downside here is that you do have a limited number of smoke bombs which you can carry at any given time, and they can be resource intensive to craft or buy, so this variation probably isn't the most practical to use all the time. But the Carjastalker Elite does come with +2 smoke bomb capacity skill, which increases the amount of smoke bombs you can carry, and it comes with the +2 low profile skill, which will help keep you in stealth longer. And that is my You Shall Not Pass Tripcaster build. But what other Horizon Forbidden West builds would you like to see? While we sit here and wait patiently for a new Horizon game, I've been playing around with a ton of cool and creative builds, so if you have any suggestions or recommendations, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.